have this thing on. That way everything Matt says is going to be recorded. All right, so we got wanted to do something a little bit different today. I know this for a lot of the folks on this call, and we opened it up to more than just the War Room Mastermind, just because we wanted to get a good audience here. But the idea was we wanted to introduce, you guys hearing everything all right? All right, cool. We wanted to introduce a group that we're incredibly passionate about, David and I. The Exodus Road, Matt Parker, who is on the call, showing as Scott Sterling, but Scott's with us too. He's the ops guy, and Matt is the CEO of Exodus Road. And David and I have been, searching for a group that we could, really pour into. They're down here in Colorado Springs, and we just really connected with Matt and Scott, and really love what they're doing, and are passionate about what they're doing. And so we wanted to really kind of introduce something a little bit different to you guys today, and kind of get some behind the scenes stuff, some of the stuff that you don't normally hear about. And really this is just kind of open forum. We're going to have some pointed questions to Matt to talk about, but if you guys have questions, feel free to post it in the chat section, and then we can dive in as well. Dave, you got anything to add to that?
No, I just want to thank everybody for showing up today. Really, this is an opportunity, one, to expose our network and our friends and family and loved ones to something that we're very passionate about, as Stu said. And it gives you a couple reasons here. One, gives you some insight into the things that are out there, but also for us, there's also a huge part of a big appeal to the service after serving, right? So Stu and I are getting to that point in our career, we're looking to retire, and there's some opportunities to help serve and continue to do things that will, it's an opportunity to serve in a different way and protect those that can't protect themselves, and just an amazing cause. So, I see Ashton shaking his head. We were chit-chatting a couple months ago, a couple weeks, I don't know how long ago it was, but just about this element of service and these passions that continue to drive us, and that doesn't go away whether you are still active, if you're reserve, or if you're retiring. There's that element that we continue to just love to serve, and this is just a really unique opportunity. So looking forward to hearing from the team at Exodus Road. Stu and I are in the same room for the first time in a long time doing his recording, so I can tell you he smells a lot better over Zoom. So you guys are blessed in that way, but really excited about this presentation today, and just pumped to hear from the Exodus Road team.
So I'm gonna introduce Matt, and he's on the screen as Scott, but Matt's in the office next door here at their headquarters, and Matt is the CEO of Exodus Road. And Matt, I'm gonna turn it over to you. If you could just start with kind of who you are, your background, and how this thing even got started.
Yeah, thank you, Stu. I appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So yeah, it's great to be here with you guys on a Saturday morning. As Stu said, I'm the CEO, co-founder of the Exodus Road. We're a nonprofit organization based here in the United States, but I've also stood up affiliate organizations in 6 countries as we fight human trafficking all around the world. That's what we do. And, all of you guys on this call probably have some, badass military experience. I didn't have that. I was a youth pastor for the majority of my first career, working with students in the community, but I've always had this passion for the global poor. And I was invited to take a position in northern Thailand back in 2010, running a children's home of impoverished hill tribe girls who needed education. And I moved my family overseas. We started to work in this children's home. It was challenging, but totally up my alley. And in the process of kind of working there, I stumbled across the issue of human trafficking. And guys, I didn't know that much about it at all. And but through a series of bizarre circumstances, I ended up being deputized by the Thai Royal Police, and they asked if I would assist them in finding children that were being sold for sexual services and identifying the perpetrators who were uh, selling them, and also the Johns is what we call them, who were buying them. And I did not know what I was doing, but there was this conviction that I had because I have three children. And at the time, I had two daughters and a son. They were like 4, 6, and 8 years old. Um, and some of these children that were being abused were that young. And so it just kind of felt like, how can I ignore this? I've been invited to be a part of a solution. Um, and it was a corrupt environment, of course. Law enforcement in Southeast Asia is highly corrupt. They're underfunded, undertrained, they're understaffed. All those issues we see now all around the world with a lot of law enforcement agencies. There's some good actors, and then there's some corrupt actors that are a part of human trafficking. And so I was invited to become an undercover operative for the Thai Royal Police as a Farang, which is Thai for foreigner. And I speak Thai, and the premise to this was, hey, they're not going to assume that you work for the Thai Royal Police because you're an American, and I was volunteering, of course, they weren't paying me. But what started as really just this pretty innocent, hey, I want to help, turned into a very effective means by which we can go undercover, pose as Johns to traffickers and brokers that are selling children, and they trust us because we don't look like we're Thai police, and they open their portfolio of people that they're selling, and we secretly are filming and recording that information and intelligence, delivering that back to law enforcement. And we started to become very successful. We found children as young as 13 in that first year. um, I think in year one we rescued around 32 children. And I started to grow my team in Southeast Asia. We started to hire nationals and train them. And then we expanded into India. Uh, we started to partner with law enforcement here in the United States. Now we're in parts of Latin America I can't really share. And we have expanded into the Philippines as well. And what started out as just this simple, hey, I know children are being abused. How can I help? Turned into this small army of investigators. We have 80 staff now, looking for kids around the clock. Um, and we've rescued just over 1,500 children and arrested around 900 pedophiles and traffickers in the last 10 years. And that probably doesn't sound like a lot when you look at the problem of human trafficking. The International Labor Organization is estimating 40.3, I think now, million modern day slaves all around the world. And those of you serving in Iraq and parts of the Middle East, you've seen trafficking. It's so proliferate there. And even parts of Southeast Asia, I know a lot of military guys do a little R&R in parts of Thailand, and it's pretty out there. It's not really a hidden thing. Um, but it is something that, as much as we can, we want to fight against. So that's a little bit about my background and what we're doing here at the Exodus Road. Yeah, what else you got, Stu? What are the questions you got for me?
Yeah. So it's amazing to me that, you know, a youth pastor decides to move over to Thailand to open up and help with the school. And now all of a sudden you're like going undercover, you know, with like secret cameras and you know, doing undercover ops. Like if you could just kind of and you and Laura wrote a book about it, and I'd be interested to hear kind of like thoughts, feelings, emotions on that like first operation that you went on.
Yeah. I think, just honestly and humbly, it's like I didn't know what I was signing up for. Um, I wanted to help, but what I didn't know is that the police actually didn't know what to do either. All they really knew was there's a lot of kids being sold on their watch, and they weren't sure how to proceed. And part of that is because if you are a Thai law enforcement officer, um, a lot of these establishments won't let Thai people in. You have to be a foreigner. Otherwise, you would have to have a warrant, and those aren't easy to get in Thailand without some amount of evidence. And so, you guys have traveled, you've probably seen it. Most of these brothel environments, at least the commercial brothel environments, have these red light districts, with lights and neon lights. And some of these red light districts have made it into movies like The Hangover, where you're on the main street or the alley, and then there's a door with a black curtain. You've probably seen that. Well, it's what happens behind that black curtain that you have to have a warrant to forcibly get into. And I've been undercover with some of my Thai staff, and I've tried to get them with me into some of these places. And man, they just pushed him down and said, you can't come in. And so there is a security protocol for some of these places, and that's clientele is one of them. They're only going to let you in if they really don't think you're connected to law enforcement. But that first experience for me was terrifying, and I would love to kind of convince you guys that this really nice beard I have means I'm really brave. But at the end of the day, I was terrified. Um, and I was raised Southern Baptist. I don't know if you guys know what that means, but I was not allowed. I definitely was a good Southern Baptist. And I had not been to strip clubs as a kid or as an adult. This was my first experience engaging in a type of underworld that I'd spent my whole life avoiding. And so I remember stepping into that environment, anticipating some amount of evil presence. I think as a young Southern Baptist, they really drill that stuff into you. There's going to be demons in that place. It's going to, you may not get out with your life. There was a lot of that fear and trepidation of what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And my very first covert camera, the law enforcement team had asked me to film, and I'm like, well, okay, do you have a camera? They're like, no, we don't have one. So I had to order my first undercover camera on Amazon, and I built it into an apparatus on, it's like arts and crafts. And so, there was just not a lot of hand holding for me or instructions as far as how to get the intelligence. And so I was pretty nervous because these can be dangerous environments, and I knew that they could be. But I think what shocked me is out of all that fear of what might be happening, I don't know, spiritually in this place, or what what dangers might await for me behind the black curtain. When I entered into that place, I didn't sense any of that. What hit me immediately was every single person in that room is a broken individual. The traffickers, I started to get to know those guys and gals, and they are sad people. They were abused as kids, or they were forced into prostitution or trafficked themselves and aged out. And so this was their way to continue to earn an income. The girls and boys that were trafficked, desperately poor. The Johns who are buying sex in general, but especially for minors. They uh, are broken people. They're hollow. You know, their soul, it's like it's not there or something. They're so sad. And I've befriended a lot of those guys over the years and heard their story. And some of them are feeling like they're living like, you know, a king, being able to travel the world and buy girls and do whatever they want. But most of them, guys, they're just sad. You know, they're on their second, third marriage. They really have used kind of buying sex as a drug just to get through another day, and it never satisfies. So, you know, that first experience, I remember being terrified until I walked into that place. And then what was so clear to me is just, man, this is a dangerous place. But the actors that are in here, they are all broken people and they're very sad. And so I kind of got to go in there and be myself and be a happy person. And they were just drawn to me. It's like I was, uh, I was water to them because I was talking to them and hugging them. And meanwhile, I'm getting an incredible amount of intelligence from it because people, it's hard for humans to keep secrets. You guys all probably know that. They want to tell me what's going on in their life, and man, they want to trust me. So that was my first experience. It was pretty shocking to me, um, that this is, you know, brothels and, you know, certain bars, they're kind of collection points for all of the world's broken of society. That's where they end up hanging out. And so, unfortunately, that's where a lot of young girls and boys end up uh, being sold. So that was kind of my first exposure back in 2000. I think it was 11. So some of my first undercover work.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think the perspective of just what you saw in there, you know, and it wasn't demons manifesting, it was a bunch of broken people kind of coming together, I think is just an incredible insight. So thank you for sharing that. I'd also, you know, there's a number of military folks in here. I'd say the vast majority, and we love sea stories. I think it's ubiquitous across the services that we love sea stories. If you don't mind, and I know that there's a lot of the stuff that you can't share, but if you don't mind sharing kind of one of your you know, favorite stories and how that unraveled and how that played out, we'd be really appreciative.
Yeah. I have several that are meaningful, but the one that came to mind for you guys this morning was a few years ago. I was doing a case in Latin America, and um, you know, when you think about intelligence networks and counter trafficking networks and syndication, there's mom and pop shops, right, where an uncle or a cousin is selling a niece or nephew, and it's a smaller operation. But then there's these really large transnational syndicates that are operating, right? And they're trading girls and boys across borders in the hundreds. And this was one of those cases where we had the privilege of partnering with law enforcement to take down a very large syndicate. And it was a node, it was a criminal node, but we thought it was the whole kit and caboodle at the time. And we had arrested 17 traffickers and freed over 160 girls that were being trafficked in this little town, in this syndicate, in this area of Latin America. But after that event, law enforcement, unbeknownst to us, had tapped a whole bunch of phones. Certain parts of the world, man, they don't need warrants. They'll just tap phones. It is so helpful. So we got called back to this town, and they said, look, Matt, we know we took down, 17 kingpins, in this one area, all trading girls, but there's another node that we feel is connected to the syndicate in another town. So we got on a plane, flew to this town, and there was a task force of law enforcement assigned to my unit, the Delta team, and we're all like in this hotel room. And the goal of our team was to make contact with a suspected trafficker who had been operating in this other town with links back to the other syndicate. and law enforcement had tapped her phone and they knew where she was, but they weren't, they were unsuccessful in getting her to come out of hiding. And so that was our job. And so I had, um, some Latin American investigators with me, Charlie team, and then we had Delta team guys, which are mostly Americans, but maybe some Aussies and Canadians occasionally. And one of my senior guys speaks fluent Spanish, but he made his Spanish a little bit broken. He got this trafficker on the phone. And it was, guys, we're sitting there in this hotel room. We're all like surrounding this bed. There's a cell phone on the bed. It's straight out of a movie. And the police that were embedded with us seemed fairly unaffected until that trafficker picked up the phone. I think they were so shocked that she would answer the phone. They animated and started, trying to get my guy to say certain things. And I'm like, why didn't we do this before the call if you really wanted them to say something specific? But long story short, she agrees to deliver children to us. I was on that mission. I was the jefe, and I was in town for a party, for business deal, and my team was going to arrange some girls for me to have a party. And so what was really cool about this case is, the trafficker agreed to do a casting, to bring some of the best in her portfolio of young girls and let my team select them for me because I'm a very selective guy, So they had a meetup at a mall, and I was able to deploy 3 different units to cover the area and have multiple film angles for the meetup. And of course, I stayed behind, but my team was successful at having a meetup, scrolling through some photos on a phone of girls being sold, and then arranging a party later that evening. What was interesting, though, is the cops were tracking the trafficker the entire time through that tapped phone that they had, and that trafficker never left. She was at a nail salon like 5 hours from the city. And so what was so important about that was this kind of kingpin trafficker had mini-me's, people pretending to be her, doing these meetups. I think that's brilliant. So what had ended up happening is we got a new phone number and the police immediately tapped that. So now we took the case from 1 tapped phone to 2 tapped phones, and we're starting to slowly build out this network. And evening time came, and law enforcement embedded with myself and Delta team and members of Charlie team, my Latin American investigations team. And we engaged a trafficker in this public park. Girls were delivered to us, and then we went to this club. And what I loved about this case, is, and maybe you guys can feel this from your all's experience, the rush you get from having a cohesive intelligence gathering team is amazing. It's amazing. And we had divided the team into 3 units, and we had some shadows, and we use the word shadow. It's primary intelligence personnel, but then you may have some other staff intelligence guys that the police don't know about. For their safety, for my safety, I have team members that we don't talk about. And so we were able to stage kind of this core intelligence gathering team with the young girls that were being sold to us. But within that club, I had 2 additional teams. And that was for my security, but also just for ongoing intelligence gathering. And the clubs all over the world are a little bit different, but this one had narcotics. This one had firearms. It was the real deal, and it was a dangerous environment. But the police that were embedded with us had never done anything like that. And I think that's always surprising to me when you think about law enforcement. First and foremost, you think, well, this is their job, right? Fighting human trafficking, that is a law enforcement activity. But like I said, they're mostly underfunded, undertrained, and understaffed. And this particular unit came up to us very frankly and said, we've never done this before. We don't have the money to do an operation like this. And it doesn't cost a lot to do an operation like this, but it's outside the scope of their budgets. So they were eager to learn from us. And, they all kind of pretended to be business associates in that part of the world of mine, or tour guides even. And the night went on, and we started to collect covert footage and audio of these interviews we would casually have with these victims over a drink in this club. I think one of the most touching things about that is, in the undercover environment, I'm playing a role. I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Everybody on my team, we're all pretending. We're highly trained, but we're pretending to be someone we're not. And that's actually critically important. Those cover stories, it protects everyone. It actually protects the victim as well, because traffickers, if it becomes known to them that victims were talking to an undercover operative, it puts them at risk too. But one of the girls that I was with that night, her name was Laura, which happens to be my wife's name. And I would put her probably 17, maybe 18. She may have been of legal age, but all of these girls all around the world, this is not their first job choice. And I was talking to her in my undercover story and getting intelligence, and you always kind of know in the undercover space that everybody's lying. You know that I'm lying, traffickers are lying. Oftentimes the victims are lying because they're under duress. If they don't, there's retribution against them. But in the process of exchanging in that part of the world, I think they use WhatsApp. You guys are probably familiar with WhatsApp. We exchanged on my operative phone. I got her WhatsApp ID. The evening went just fine. We wrapped up. We gave all that intelligence to law enforcement, tucked ourselves back into our hotel room. But I was trying to capture some of that evidence off of my WhatsApp ID, because we had chatted back and forth, this one victim. And I noticed, I don't know if I'm going to be able to tell this story you have to imagine with me. You know how on WhatsApp you have a profile picture just next to your little messages? It looked funny to me, and I clicked on it, and it was script. It was in Spanish. I couldn't really read it. It was in script, and it had a heart around the script to highlight kind of the script that's in the middle. And then it was fuzzy, around the heart. And instantly, I just felt like this looks like a Bible verse. So I got my personal phone out, used Google Translate with my ops phone, and it was. And this verse said, it was, I think, a Proverbs or a Psalm. It said, hide me like the apple of my eye. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. Protect me like the apple of your eye. And it just caught me, that this young girl who was pretending, had a role to play that night, under duress, under threat to be sexual or to try to buy, try to sell herself. Like, who she really was hidden from me until that moment, where it's clear that she's a person of faith, and that she wants something different for her life. And I just started to bawl, because I was pretending too, of course. And here I being, a man of God pursuing freedom for children, undercover with this girl who's pretending out of duress and threat to be something she's not. And both of us, really, what we want more than anything is to please the Lord. And that moment, it's where these two undercover worlds kind of collided. And that moment is transformative for people like us. I'm happy to say it took about a year, but we initiated through that investigation a process that led to one of the largest transnational syndicate takedowns in the Exodus Roads history. we were able to tap lots of phones by the end of it, build out the network, and rescued 80 girls and arrested, I think it was 8 or 9 traffickers, 2 of which were Americans. U.S. Marshal's office got involved as well in that case. And, I'm just really proud of our team. But I think the thing about that case that sticks to me is Laura, that these girls that appear to be prostitutes or sex workers, that's what it looks like. Behind this mask that they wear is a child that's very vulnerable and is being exploited. So that's a big story for me. And it ended with a big bust, 50 law enforcement officers surrounded a 9-block area. And man, they mean business when they start doing that. They just took down this whole syndicate.
And Matt, you should have given us heads up, maybe put some Kleenex in the ops room. You're gonna tell stories like that.
All my stories are like that.
Yeah. Hey, and you and I have talked about kind of differences in theaters. And, you're kind of telling a Latin American story. And, we've talked about the dangers and the differences between like what you need to be looking out for as an operative, as Delta team. If you could just kind of explain, the theaters and the differences and how you kind of run different operations in different areas.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Stu. And each country's a little bit different, and I feel like I could learn so much from all you guys who are military experienced here. Southeast Asia, it's harder to get firearms in Southeast Asia as possible, but it's not common. And when we do rescue and raids, oftentimes we'll find a pistol, but not like 10 of them. Normally it's one of them and it's really old and not been cleaned. But they love blades. Southeast Asia, they got blades. They all kind of carry that. In Latin America, of course, firearms is a major concern. Everybody has firearms, and the laws around carrying is a lot lighter, especially if you're military, veteran, law enforcement, retired or active. You can carry in parts of Latin America. So there's just a lot more guns on the street. I'm always a little bit concerned about Russian brothels because and certain cartel run syndication, because they'll chop you up, and so you just have to really your tradecraft has to be spot on for those. I will tell one quick story. I was in Southeast Asia. This was probably 6 years ago. And we do a lot of training here at the Exodus Road for our operatives, and we require biannual refresher courses on undercover operations and tactics, TTPs. And one of the reasons is all of these environments are highly watched. And so we call them spotters, but every brothel environment I've ever been in, they have a security measure and a security force. And one of the things we discovered early days was a lot of them will pay motorcycle taxis to just sit on a curb and watch the street. And they're watching the street probably more for law enforcement activity, but for anything that looks odd. And in the last 3-4 years, we've noticed they also pay spotters who infiltrate the community. So they'll walk in and out of brothels, they'll walk up and down the alley, and they have these little notebooks and they're taking notes of suspicious people. I mean, it's impressive that they have that mindset of protecting their business to that degree. But I was undercover in a particularly nasty bar, and I had spoken with the district attorney like a week before this operation, and I described to him what was taking place behind the black curtain of this one bar. And I was like, I don't think you understand, whether it's human trafficking or not, all kinds of illegal activities happening in here. Let's just take down the whole establishment. Because this part of Southeast Asia is highly, highly corrupt. It's difficult to get a human trafficking charge pushed through, but there's other charges that are easier, especially with the DEA, other types of women's and rights abuses. And so I described it to the DA. He's like, if you bring me video evidence of that, we're taking down the establishment. Okay, game on. So I'm undercover with a small team. I had one invested. We always works in teams of 2 or more. We normally deploy a team of 8 or 10 in a community, and through the talk, we farm them out to different establishments and targets. So I'm undercover in this one really nasty place, and I've got my covert recording devices filming. But man, it's like where I was seated, it wasn't quite right. They had these raised platforms where illicit activity was happening, and I just couldn't quite film it. And so as an investigator, one of the things we train so much to do is how to control and deploy your covert gear in a way that doesn't look like you're filming, right? Holding your cell phone up in front of people is not going to get you very far. So I had this pinhole camera, and I had it built into an apparatus, and I cross my legs and I kind of have my knee a little bit higher, and I'm trying to rest this camera on my knee to get it up, so I could film in this. And I was trying to look casual, and I'm pretty good at it, guys, but no one's perfect. Nobody's that good. So the guy that I was with, my investigator, saw a young person walk into the brothel, sit down with a notepad, looked right at me right when I was doing that maneuver, wrote something down on that pad, and left the brothel. And so I'm blown. I mean, that was the total belief, is that that spotter is en route to mobilize the security force to come take care of me. And so we have protocols for that, and we had to use them. Unfortunately, we divided the team, and I left the operating theater, the operating environment, and we have to run SDRs, surveillance detection routes. I'm sure you guys do all that. And no one was following me. I was feeling pretty good, but I did go into a shop, go to the back, change shirts, buy a cap, put a cap on. And it's late. It's like midnight. So I went in, I did that change real quick. I came out, did a 360. Nobody's following me. I felt pretty good. So I walked down the dark alley, turned left, and went into a McDonald's. And I just checked in with command, make sure everybody's okay. And guys, I'm sitting there back to the wall, just like I'm supposed to. And a very large Nigerian man walks into McDonald's, looks right into my eyes, and holds the stare for just a second too long, and then sits across from me. Now, what I know is the Nigerian mafia runs in this part of the world, and they're part of protection systems for syndication, and they're actually a part of the control mechanism for the girls and boys they traffic. So I knew that. And my heart rate, guys, I knew this was not a good situation. And so, I kind of have like a paper or something I'm reading, and I'm just looking at this guy through my peripheral, and I send in a coded text to Delta Command. I'm in trouble. I need you to send me some support. And this guy, he just keeps looking at me, and I'm just not sure what to do. It's a unique moment. It's a unique moment. You're in Southeast Asia, you got a McDonald's burger in front of you, and you're like, how am I going to get out of this situation? God, I need you to send some help. I just felt like this isn't going to end well. And as much as I had just called for backup, I figured he'd probably done the same. They'd found me, and there's other Nigerian guys, and these guys, man, they lift weights, And so I'm sitting there praying, and I'm asking God for help. And I hope I don't give away the location of this by telling you this detail, but there's a lot of tourists in this area who are from Japan and China. And it's hilarious because they carry these flags on a pole, and it's like they all get let off the school bus walking down the red light districts, Well, apparently there's like 200 of them that wanted McDonald's at the same time. And I watch them, the door opens, and there's a line of like 50, Chinese or Japanese tourists coming in for McDonald's. And I heard the Spirit say, go. And I stood up, because that line of tourists was between me and the Nigerian guy, and I just slipped out. And I did 2 lefts and a right, and no one was following me, and I totally left the whole operating theater. But guys, that's the type of danger. And most of you are probably like kung fu experts and could just break that guy's face, but that's really not our goal. And that leads to other issues as well legally. So I was blessed to survive the night, but as far as the dangers and risks, we're constantly being monitored and watched. And if you don't look like you fit, then they're going to come after you pretty much.
Man, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I would have just like kung fu him.
Stu would not be here today. I'd have a different business partner, and
I would have pooped in my pants.
You would have pooped in your pants. You actually probably would have got away because of stench. You would be like, "I'm out. You go." Hey, one thing that and people can get some insight on the website. The Exodus Road. You can go on there, and I think it's under About Us, or there's basically you can get a free book that Matt and Laura put out to give some information. But I'm always intrigued, and I think we're gonna have Laura on as a podcast guest if she's willing. But what does this do to the family?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I was worried about that too. Youth pastor, from youth pastoring and being a missionary to an undercover operative, and deputized by the Thai Royal Police, and the underworld of the sex trade, the human sex trade. What does that do to a marriage? What does that do to my own soul? And this is what I can tell you guys, and I know that this probably wouldn't be everybody's experience, but it's brought my wife and I closer. It's forced us to have conversations we wouldn't have otherwise had, about our own intimacy. And I'm exposed to all manner of rape and child molestation and all this stuff. I'm doing it for the right reasons, but that shit's heavy, and you carry that. And Laura and I decided from an early time that she was going to watch my covert footage. She was going to process and debrief me in the early days. Now we have a team of people who do it, and we've got a psychologist who helps us unpack trauma, because we get tertiary trauma. Sometimes it's direct if there's a threat against us, but most of the time we're not getting stabbed, but we saw somebody get stabbed, that type of thing. But I will say this, I think in the realm of marriage, and especially sexuality within a marriage, I was raised so conservative, there wasn't a lot of guidance for anything. And so you feel a little bit like because I was married at 21, I was and Laura and I are high school sweethearts too. You're kind of fumbling through, what is it like to be a good man? What is it like to be intimate with your wife in a way that honors God and that's healthy? And then you go into the undercover world of human sex trafficking, and how are you going to navigate that with your family? And so from the very beginning, Laura and I, and she says this in her book, we agreed to be open and honest and committed to a dialogue. And guys, it changed my marriage for the better. Because I had to be honest about things that I was feeling and things I wanted that I was afraid to say before. And that doesn't mean in marriage that your wife's going to do everything you want, but there's this compromise and there's this type of intimacy of knowledge that really just wasn't there before. And there was a compassion in both sides of that. And I think the brothel forced Laura and I to be honest about those things. So I think that's been a plus. I think for my kids, of course, they were really young and we didn't give them a lot of details about child sexual abuse or exploitation, but they knew that daddy was secretly looking to go help kids who were in trouble. And so over the years, they've heard me give speeches all around, and they know now. Of course, my oldest is now 18. They know exactly what I do, and they want to come work for the Exodus Road. I think there is a legacy that we leave, whether we want to leave it or not, for those who come behind us. And that's kind of always been at the forefront of my mind with this is, most of my job I don't get to talk about, and it's kind of secretive. I get to represent publicly the plight of the poor and the plight of victims of human trafficking. I do my very best to do that. And my kids are somehow in the middle of both because they see daddy deploy for 2-3 weeks at a time. And I know you guys are like 2-3 weeks, that's nothing. Yeah, no. But then they see me come and take a stage and take a mic and also try to tell stories that inspire people to care about what's happening all around the world. So I think it's been really good for my family in the majority. I've missed some birthdays and I've missed soccer games and things that I wish I didn't have to miss. But if you have to miss those things, it's for the right reason. And my kids, they know that. And the other side of this is I really try to be a good dad. And to me, that means time. I try to spend time with my kids. I take them all on dates. If I'm traveling somewhere domestically, I drag one of them with me. I put them on the plane with me. As much as I can, I try to do those things. So I would say that I'm very thankful that this journey, as treacherous as it has been, it's been good for my family and good for my marriage.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I first when I first told my wife Crystal that I was gonna apply for Delta Team and go do undercover ops and go into brothels, she wasn't too excited about that. But I'm working on her. So,
Yeah.
hey, Ashton brought up a good question in the chat here. He asked, "What happens to all the girls that get rescued? Is there some sort of reform for them? Is there funding to help them get back on their feet and educated?"
Yeah, great question. That's the number one question we get. The answer is yes. I would say 99% of the survivors that we rescue, they are very clearly in the protection and service of the Department of Social Welfare. Most countries have that. And so they'll have government shelters that they put them in until their trial date. Some of those are good. Some of them are not so good. And so we hire social workers to follow up with survivors, make sure they're getting quality care, make sure we know where they're at, because sometimes the Department of Social Welfare is corrupt as well, and they may try to sell them back to the trafficker, or they may disappear. So we do social workers. We do have a safe house. It's called the Freedom House, and it's a new initiative for us. We're standing that up now. It'll launch in October, but it's for girls that are 18 and over. The Department of Social Welfare will care for minors. They're mandated to do that. But if they were trafficked at like 13 and rescued at 18, they really treat them as illegal immigrants, or try to charge them a fine and just put them back out on the street. And almost no one's doing anything about those girls. And so we have a program. It's a very comprehensive, trauma-informed, safe house environment where they get ongoing education. They can go back to school if they didn't finish their grade school. We have an integrated internship program where we're trying to get these girls employment, but it's all optional for them because they're adults. So that's my answer. If they're minors, they're going to end up, most likely 90% of the time, they're going to end up in government shelter. There might be 9% of them that end up in a private shelter. But most private shelters are very, very small, and they have long-term programs. And so there's not a lot of beds for girls. And then if they're of age, they would qualify to be in our home.
Hey, Brandon asks,
And you can donate to that. On our website, sorry to interrupt you, Stu.
Go ahead.
We do three main things. We have Traffic Watch, which is an international training initiative here in the United States as well. So we train law enforcement. This year we'll train 20,000 law enforcement officers in Latin America through an online portal where we have 10 modules on the basics of human trafficking law, trauma-informed care. And we have governments signing up to take this. But Traffic Watch also is for domestic use, civilian use here, where we train just the average individual Joe to know the basics of human trafficking and what to do if you see it, who to call. And so that's really cool. I'd love for you to check it out. Traffic Watch is our prevention focus. Then, of course, Search and rescue is our intervention program. And then beyond rescue is where our safe house network is coming out of that. And you can donate just to aftercare if you care about that through our website or intervention work or traffic watch. So our website kind of does all that good stuff for you, points you in the right direction as far as how to get involved.
Yeah, and the real Scott Sterling posted that link in the chat for those that are interested.
Hey, Matt, Brandon asked a really good question too. He says, you know, you've seen a lot of shocking and disturbing things. So like, what do you do personally to keep your mind and body strong to build up your resilience?
Yeah, I can only speak. Trauma is a weird thing, guys and gals. It hits us all very, very differently. So the way we handle it for Delta guys and our Alpha Bravo Charlie teams, we mission brief and we mission debrief, and that's really important as a team to process trauma. So after a night of investigations, we circle the wagons, and whoever's running talk is kind of leading the team through expressing what we call the haunting, or things that stick to you like tar. And it could be an image of a child being raped. It could be the stress of imminent threat. But whatever's kind of hanging over us at the end of a night of operations, we encourage everybody to get that into words and out. And that really is important. We have a doctorate of psychology that kind of helps inform our debriefing. But then after the debriefing, we mandate professional debriefing. And you guys are probably familiar with that too. Trauma counseling. Personally, beyond that, you know, I'm in prayer, you know, and I'm just asking God to heal me. And there's these small rituals that I have, and I don't think I've ever shared this with anybody. But you know, when I come off a night of investigations, there's something about the shower, and I just pray, God, will you wash off of me the things that are sticking to me and haunting me? And then I call it reentry. When I get back to the United States, it takes me a few days to process with my wife the things I've seen and done, and that normally ends up in some amount of tears. I'm a feeler. I'm an emotional guy. And you know, those tears feel really good. It's some type of release valve or a type of vomit. You know, you're getting this cover story. You know, you're hanging that hat up and you're putting on the real self again. So those are just those exercises I go through. And then finally, you know, I tell people it's a little bit like being a trash collector. You know, at some point, you stop smelling the garbage. You just get kind of used to it. And there's this battle rhythm of life over the last 10 years of doing it that I have found that has been really, really helpful for me. So I think the thing, when I'm exposed to things today, it impacts me less than when I first started to go undercover. And you build up a resilience and a callous to the realities of the world. So I think your spirit can handle it a little bit better. But those are kind of my exercises, because it is traumatic. And thankfully, by God's grace, we've not had serious injury or retribution against anyone here at the Exodus Road. But we know that that's a possibility. And we're constantly working and strategizing on how to protect everybody.
This reminds me, the question reminded me, there's one of y'all's podcast episodes, and guys and gals, like, they have an amazing podcast. There's some really, really cool stuff in there. But one of the podcast episodes, you know, you guys have some folks on your Delta team that are, you know, singer-songwriters that have a band, videographers. And so I know, like, one guy, like, basically writes music about his experiences. Another guy, like, writes letters, like writes personal letters to you know, individuals that he was in contact with, and that was really cool. But yeah, the podcast you guys have is amazing. And before we get off, talk about, like, what, you know, guys and gals like us could possibly do and help. And I'm talking about, like, not just like money and giving, but, like, you know, hey, if this sounds appealing to, like, hey, Delta team application, intel, you know, connections, like, what can we as, like, primarily military veteran community, like, help?
Yeah, thank you. So totally, you guys could apply to join Delta Team. It's our international QRF, Quick Reaction Force team. We send them around the world when law enforcement asks, or we augment the efforts of our National Investigations Force. So Delta Team's an option. It's purely volunteer. We don't pay any Delta members. We train you, make you sign a whole bunch of things, equip you with covert gear, put you on a team with some experienced investigators. We train you up, and we have 4 levels of expertise, Delta Black being the most advanced investigator. But you start off as Delta Green. So, that's an option for you guys. We have applicants there. Lots of people want to join that team. It's pretty hard to get in because we give a lot of psych evals and all that stuff to make sure you're fit for duty. But about, I think 6 to 8% who apply, they make it through. And we have a strong Delta force right now. It's only about 20 investigators, but we send them all around the world. So that's an option. If you have a skill set, especially in the cyber warfare side of the house, I am standing up a very powerful effort for data scraping, open source media for trafficking. And there's a few tools out there that do that, but I'm always amazed at how the cyber side of the house is just constantly innovating and changing, and it really requires a lot of expertise that I don't have. And this is in support of our U.S. partners, but really our international partners who don't have that type of skill set or the technology or tools to do that type of effort. So I've been really working through that, praying through that. I've been talking to some experts that want to stand up a cyber warfare unit for the Exodus Road. We may be able to secure certain government contracts to that end as well. So if you have skills that you're like, hey, Matt, have you ever thought of XYZ? I would love that email from you guys. I am constantly innovating how we do what we do. And the human intelligence side is a mainstay. It's going to be here forever. You got to go check out the realities of whatever you find online. You have to have people to do it. But the cyber side is of real interest to me. Any kind of expertise any of you would have in intelligence gathering that we could glean from, I would love that. So you can reach out to me directly. That would be great. Matt@theexodusroad.com. Super difficult to remember. I would love for you guys to think through, hey, I have a skill that I think could be helpful in this fight. Everybody has a role to play, even if it's not with me. People ask me that a lot, what can I do? And nobody really answered that for me. I stumbled across this opportunity to become an undercover investigator for Thai Royal Police, but for you, it could be something else. I love what you said, Stu. David Zock is a rock star. He's got a band called Remedy Drive, and he writes songs about this issue. And he does what he can. Of course, he joined Delta Team, but he's out there representing the plight of the poor through his music and shining light on the darkness that's happening in our own society and on our watch. You may be an investigator. You may be a cyber expert who can data scrape and mine for information that really, shines a light on traffickers and perpetrators and child pornographers. There's just so much that can be done. And then I think at the end of the day, what I love to tell people is, get off your phones when you're walking down the street and get your head up. Have your situational awareness keyed in a little bit better to notice not just threats against your person, but to notice those whom you're walking by who may actually really need your help. The homeless person or the girl that's on a street corner. It's okay to go up to people and say, hey, are you doing okay? Do you need help? How can I help you? That's like this overarching question in my life when I meet people. The question is, how can I be of service? How can I help you? So that's what I would say. Everybody on this call can take our Traffic Watch training as well on our website, or sign up to take that. And it gives you some basics on, what do you do if you see, who do you call? And I know military guys, a lot of us just want to go, break somebody's face. But in the end, it's a better idea to call the right authorities so that girl or boy gets some services. that it's difficult for an average person to provide housing, for example, or legal support. So that's my recommendation. And all that, guys, theexodusroad.com is a great website. We've got a wonderful team here, and they've tried to make it beautiful for you guys. And there's lots of little videos, and man, they make me look amazing. It's amazing what a good editor will do. So I would encourage you guys to spend time there, and you can sign up for rescue alerts on your phone. Every rescue that we conduct, you can get an alert, and we tell you the story. Of course, we love your financial support to keep this thing going. We can't do it without financial support, and any amount is important. It's not so much about the amount; it's about the heart attached to a mission that's worth fighting. So yeah, check it out, and hopefully those things will be helpful to you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome, Matt. And I also want to bring light to, one of the members that's here, the real Scott Sterling. I know you're undercover on this call right now. Actually, the editing of your beard, he doesn't even have a beard. It's pretty amazing. But, Scott, just want to express appreciation for you. You're the touch point for a lot of the things that we do. You set things like this up and enable these amazing, incredible opportunities, whether it's a podcast, whether it's giving, whether it's some kind of event. So I just want to express just true gratitude to you for everything you do, brother. So appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And you guys have been awesome. I mean, this stuff, this happens just through conversation and partnerships like this opportunity. We just can't thank you guys enough for the chance to connect. Powers in numbers. And, this just was bred just based on just talking, text, conversations with David and Stu. And that's what we're looking for is any of you all out there that get off this call and check out our website to start processing things. You ever just want to talk through things and get creative, reach out. We want conversations. We want to grow this thing. We have an opportunity to do some really special things. So we really appreciate this opportunity with you all. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. And hey, Matt, again, you're so appreciative for your time and everything that you're doing, the way that you're changing the world, the influence, the true impact, and everybody on this call. I just want to encourage each and every one of you. You bring something to the fight, right? Whether it's your expertise. I mean, I'm looking at Tyler's face right now, and just his organization with his, his mother-in-law's organization, and I know we've connected you guys, and just the I don't even know the vast array of skill sets that is on this call, but I know it's numerous. I know that there's just some highly motivated, highly skilled individuals, even those of you in the Air Force. It's all joking aside, it's an amazing group of people. I've talked to almost everybody individually on this call, and I'm always blown away and humbled by this network and just what each and every one of you bring to the fight. So just extremely grateful for everybody joining us. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Scott. You guys are freaking ninjas and rock stars. Can't wait to see how we can all change the world together. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, if you guys have any interest, please reach out to Matt and Scott, exodusroad.com. Thanks for joining us today. I hope this, maybe put a different spin on things and outlook on life, and maybe gives you a little bit bigger of a why, to your entrepreneurial and real estate journeys. So I appreciate you guys. It's great to see everybody.
Thanks for the time, guys. I appreciate it too.
All right, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next weekend.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Scott.